All right, Maximus, this is the notes I took on Aristotle and Ancient Educational Ideals by Thomas Davidson. Education ought certainly not be turned into a means of amusement, for young people are not playing when they are learning, since all learning is accompanied with pain. Above all, and by every means, we provide that our citizens shall have good souls and strong bodies. Man should be eloquent and persuasive in council, brave and resolute on the field of battle. To be well or nobly born was regarded by the Greeks as one of the best gifts of the gods. The purpose of the Greek in marriage was not so much to secure a helpmate for himself as to find a worthy mother for his children. In Greece, as everywhere else in the ancient world, marriage was looked upon solely as an arrangement for the procreation and rearing of offspring. In spite of this, and of the fact that woman was regarded as a means and not as an end, the relationships between Greek husbands and wives were very often such as to render the family a school of virtue for the children. They were noble, sweet, and strong. All the more so, it should seem that they were based not upon a delusive sentimentality, but upon reason and a sense of reciprocal duty. Greek education was intended only for the few, for the wealthy and well-born. Upon all others, slaves, barbarians, and working class, it would have seemed to be thrown away. The Greek meaning for philosopher is lover of wisdom. To be and to think are the same thing. All things were confused, then mind came and reduced them to order. The Spartan choric anthem was for the old men to say, "We were once strong men," for the men to say, "And we are, if you will, behold," and for the boys to say, "And we shall be far superior." They believed and upheld the highest degree of the Holy Trinity in the physical sense of what was, is, and shall be. There was a law that the Spartan cadets should present themselves naked in public before the ephors every 10 days, and if they were well knit and strong, and looked as if they had been carved and hammered into shape, they were praised. But if their limbs showed any flabbiness and softness, any swelling or suspicion of adipose matter due to laziness, they were flogged and justiced there and then. No cooks were permitted but flesh cooks. The Spartans were a people organized on the basis of brute force, disregarding traits like gentleness, mercy, pity, tenderness, and sympathy. The mercilessness and cruelty of the Spartans were proverbial. Higher education in Sparta was seen as counterproductive to ensuring that its citizens all operated exclusively as worshippers of the state. It was the same reason that induced Rome, during the best period of her history, to exclude her citizens from all higher education, because the more educated you are, the less eager and willing you are to be a slave. The principles of all virtue are three: knowledge, power, and choice. Knowledge is like sight, whereby we contemplate and judge things. Power is like bodily strength, whereby we endure and adhere to things. Choice is like hands to the soul, whereby we stretch out and lay hold of things. Pythagoras's aim seems to have been to gather round him a body of disciples who should endeavor to lead a perfect life based upon certain theological or metaphysical notions, guided by a rule of almost monastic strictness. Socrates and Plato were students of Pythagoras. Pythagoras believed that the aim of education is to find for each individual his true place and to make him efficient therein, to enable his men to overcome impulse, concentrate attention, and develop reflection and thoughtfulness, the first conditions of all moral and intellectual excellence. While the first care was directed to their spiritual part, their bodies were by no means forgotten. Food, clothing, and exercise were all carefully regulated on hygienic and moral principles. Most of all, thyself in reverence hold. Practice justice both in deed and word. Let never sleep thy drowsy eyelids greet, till thou hast pondered each act of the day. Wherein have I transgressed? What have I done? What duty shunned? Beginning from the first unto the last, then grieve and fear for what was basely done, but in the good rejoice. These things perform, these meditate, these love. These in the path of godlike excellence will place thee. That's a quote from Pythagoras. The old education of Athens taught the men to be Puritans, to fear the gods, to respect the laws, their neighbors, and themselves, to reverence the wisdom of experience, to despise comfort and vice, and to do honest work. They were educated to be men, friends, and citizens, not to be mere thinkers, critics, soldiers, or moneymakers. By the law of Solon, parents who failed to give their sons a proper education lost all claim upon them for support in their old age. Man is the measure of all things. From the time they are children to the day of their death, we teach them and admonish them. As soon as the child understands what is said to him, his mother and father vie with each other in trying to make the best of him that can be made, at every word and deed, instructing him and warning him. Later yet, when they have learned to read and are proceeding to understand the meaning of what is written, they put before them to read the works of good poets and insist upon their learning them by heart, works which contain many noble deeds and eulogies of the worthy men of old, their purpose being to awaken the boy's ambition, so that he may imitate these men and strive to be worthy likewise. Furthermore, in addition to this, parents send their sons to the physical trainer in order that their bodies may be improved and rendered capable of seconding a noble intent, and they themselves not be forced from physical deterioration to play the coward in war or other serious matters. That's a quote from Plato. Socrates was convinced that the reason why men fall into error was because they did not know themselves or their own thoughts, because they did not know themselves or their own thoughts, because what they called thoughts were mere opinions, mere fragments of thoughts. He concluded that if men were ever to be redeemed from error, intellectual and moral, they must be made to think whole thoughts. Socrates was considered so righteous that it blinded him into believing that men had to only know the right in order to be ready to follow it. One to me is 10,000, if he be the best. Ancient Persian law believed that those in a position to return a favor who do not do it, or those that are ungrateful, will be more than any others undutiful to God, their parents, and friends. It is generally held that ingratitude, more than anything else, leads to irreverence and is the prime mover in every form of baseness. Plato holds that virtue cannot be furthered by fear, which is characteristic only of slaves. Aristotle stands alone in philosophy. Wherever the divine wisdom of Aristotle has opened its mouth, the wisdom of others is to be disregarded. Aristotle tutored Alexander the Great since he was 13 years old. In Aristotle's view, the divine is nothing more than an immanent idea working as a form in nature and as a thought form in mind. Over and above the divine is the transcendent mind or God. It is our duty to act as immortal beings and do all we can to live in accordance with the supreme part of us. That's a quote from Aristotle. Care for the body must precede care for the soul. Next to care for the body must come care for the appetites. And last of all, care for the intelligence. We train the appetites for the sake of the intelligence and the body for the sake of the soul. It's another quote from Aristotle. The best climate for development of man is one that makes him both brave and intelligent. Aristotle believed that the training of the body ought to take precedence in time over that of the mind. As soon as children are born, it ought to be remembered that their future strength will depend greatly on the nourishment supplied to them. To act considerately is of more moment than to think wisely. One's duty is to become first man, then God. Aristotle believed in the supreme intelligence as God. I love you, son.